Just before we formally start the planning meeting of the District Council, if you've not been before, there is a toilet through to the left as you go out this door. I'm sorry, but I couldn't get a cup of coffee or tea, but there's plenty of water, so you'll have to make do with water tonight. We've got various officers. We have the Council Solicitor, James Cunningham, John Ramsey, Committee Clerk, and then we've got the various case officers that will be obviously dealing with specific items on tonight's agenda. Can everyone hear all right? You're okay? Okay. First of all, I'd like to take apologies for absence.
Through you, Chair, there are no apologies for absence at this meeting.
Any from members at all? Nothing? Right. Approval of minutes of the previous meeting. Can I thank Councillor Burfoot for chairing that meeting? Thank you, Sue. I was unwell. And you have before you the minutes of that meeting on pages 9 to 12. Now, if members wish to raise anything, this is now your chance to express any comments or anything that you feel is inaccurate from those minutes. If that's not so, can I ask that someone does move these minutes as a true and correct record of what there and therein took place? Councillor Murphy's moved them. They're seconded by Councillor Peter Dobbs. All those in favour, please show. I'm abstaining, and you weren't present, Laura, were you, on that occasion? So is there just 2 abstentions? Yes, 2 abstentions. Thank you. Members, have you any specific interests that you wish to declare at this point? I certainly will take no part and will leave the room on the final application pertaining St Giles Church in Matlock. Does anyone else wish at this point to declare any interests where you'll perhaps be having to vacate the chamber? No? Section 4 of the agenda, public participation. Robert, is there anyone specifically? We know we've got people who will be speaking before applications, but there's nothing in a general way tonight. Okay. Before we move to applications for determination, could I ask members to consider bringing forward the enforcement report, please, which is on page 77 to 80. This is right at the end of the agenda, and I just think it would be fair for the officer, Gavin Treen, who's submitted the report, that if we could take that now, and then obviously it means Gavin hasn't got to stay and sit through the whole meeting right to the end. Are members comfortable with that? I need someone to move that, please. It's been moved by Councillor Hughes, seconded by Councillor Murphy. All those in favour, please show. So we'll move on then to page 77 of the agenda. And can I place on record as chair of the planning committee my thanks to Gavin Treen for this very, very useful and informative report. So Gavin, if you'd like to take members through it, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good evening, members and members of the public. Thank you for your time, and thank you for allowing me to speak first, because I know you've got important stuff to go through later on. This report's been brought forward to you by me. It's a short report. I'm not intending to go into too much detail. I want to highlight a few points. Hopefully you've had time to have a quick or maybe a longer brief through it. I was conscious that since I did training when I arrived and was obviously threatening or promising to change a few things and do things differently, I was conscious that I hadn't spoken to you recently as a group, never mind individuals, and I just wanted to highlight some of the good, the bad and the indifferent at the moment. So you had a quick opportunity tonight if you wanted to raise anything you felt, without getting into specifics, that you agree or disagree with, as the case may be. As I say, I don't want to open it into a big general agenda. We can do that at a different arena, but I just wanted you to be aware of some of the facts and information. So going through the report, I'm not going to go through the summary, obviously, and the structure. I came here as the interim team leader. There's 2 officers, as you're aware, in the team who we operate the planning enforcement system. When I first came here, there was a relationship possibly that wasn't strong between members, wasn't strong between development control itself, and maybe even policy. So there was a weakness internally and externally. I know many of you members and your colleagues that aren't always here tonight raised issues that you weren't getting information or we weren't responding, and many other problems that we can, shout out. So I've set about trying to change the team, the way we work, the way we communicate. It's not perfect yet, and it won't be probably for another year or so. But quite a few major steps have been taken. I'm going to highlight those that I believe are helping you and therefore helping Derbyshire Dales Council to a better future, for want of a better word. So some of the changes that I've looked at is being more proactive with residents and members. Hopefully that's come across. We try and provide as much information as we can and help and trying to explain why we can, or better still, why we cannot take the actions that you might think we should do, and try and give you the background to that so it makes us all understand the processes. I think, personally, we are working better as a team in inverted commas. I have good feedback from members, and hopefully I give you the same sort of feedback that you're looking for. Yes, there are still some weaknesses, and I know what they are, and we're working hard in the background to put those right. I've also set up, there was a very weak system in the background before about how we recorded our complaints, often causing delays for you and everybody else, including the residents. So I now insisted that every complaint that's brought into this council is registered on the council's computer system that we operate. Yes, that includes you all as members as well, includes my staff, it includes the development management, they all have to register it. So I would like your continued support on that if that's possible, because then I'm able to report back to you how good, bad or indifferent we've been over a period of time. That's the purpose of it. Because later on in the report it explains that we're looking at getting out some analytical reports to you that show you what we're doing and what we're doing against other authorities, how we compare, which will be helpful to you. We did the new enforcement plan in 2025, which looked at our priorities and our standards so we can measure ourselves, which I've just said. You or some of you will have attended the training courses I did with you and parish councillors online separately. Maybe we can have a look at doing an update on that in the near future. When you're very busy, I know, but maybe we could. It would be helpful. I've had a review of all the cases that were stale, that you'd all been complaining about, the public had been complaining about, and we weren't going anywhere, and reviewed them all and set out ways forward to get them finished, however that would be. And we've also tried to, and I use the word cross-pollinate, but we're trying to connect more with development control and policy. So we've got some consistency in our policies and our decisions and conditions that you as members think are as important, so we can get them right. So the new works that we've got planned and we're working on at the moment is obviously case prioritisation. My apologies, my teeth aren't in. How we act, when we act, and looking at these reports so you can see what actions we're taking, giving you as much information as we can without obviously breaching any acts. We're looking at cherry picking some planning conditions. I know it's a hot topic in most authorities. A lot of you do make important decisions, and you're looking to put conditions where necessary on planning decisions, and we're looking how we can cherry pick them. Clearly we've got resources that are limited. We can't monitor every condition, that's not possible, but we'd like to look at how we can cherry pick important decisions, controversial sites possibly, or sites we've had past history with. And of course we're doing some training with the staff to try and improve their greater knowledge of the planning system. So just to highlight and take not much more of your time, over the last 12 months, using these general aspects, I started with 287 complaints on the system. I could probably add a few to that, but they were the ones that we could recognise that were genuinely still outstanding. That's been reduced to 65 cases as we speak this week. And of those cases, there was 14 what I would call significant. Now, you can choose what word you'd like to use, but they were major cases where we needed to take some firm action against. That's now been reduced to 2 cases. There are only 2 real major cases that give this council a lot of time and need and require for officers' time to be put into that. So there's been quite a big reduction in resolving the major cases. So the council plan is, or the enforcement plan is, to go forward in the same way, delivering a service that gives you some value, that gives you an end product, and hopefully gives some confidence to you as members and as your constituents. So I just ask you to confirm that report, and if you'd like to ask any brief, I'm sorry it's only brief, but any brief questions, or if you want to make a point that you don't believe what I've said is right, or you want to make a point that you believe is right, that would be really helpful feedback to me. As I said, I know you've got more important things to do this evening, but if there is any questions, then please ask. Thank you.
So it's open to members. Are there any questions? We've got this lovely opportunity with Gavin being here. Failing that, I'm happy to move from the chair. Does that find a second, and then I'll bring you in, Dermot.
David, I've got a quick question for you.
Yeah, there's 2 questions. So Dermot and then Lucy, please.
Okay, Councillor, where you go?
Okay. Gavin, it's funny, I've had a report today from a parish chair who says that there's an application in the village. There's a previous application that had been approved for some works. There's an application in to change the project, but she's saying they've started work before they actually receiving the new planning permission. Now, is that something we should send to your team, and would you have resource to sort of drop on that and have a look at it?
Councillor, yes, you certainly should register it with us, because if I don't know about it, I can't do anything. But if you've got a resident or residents or the village that are concerned about some development that they're proceeding with, that they haven't, in your eyes, haven't got planning permission, that may not be the case, of course, but we need to check that, then please get in touch. And we give the sort of priority to cases that, if works are ongoing, it's live. If there's things that have already been done and we can go back to it, that's a different cup of tea. So the answer is yes, and I can do it as swift as possible for you, all right, or the team will. Thank you.
Councillor Peacock.
Hi Gavin, thanks.
Hi, Councillor.
Thanks for the report. I think things have improved in enforcement, and so thank you for that, and thank you for the report. I just want to get clarification on something in point 4 of the report. You said planning enforcement plan. Oh no, not that bit. Underneath planning enforcement plan review. Look at cherry picking and therefore monitoring our planning conditions attached to high profile or controversial proposals. That sounds good, but can you clarify what you mean by cherry picking? Do you mean just taking the ones that are easy to check, or do you mean randomly sampling?
Okay, Councillor, it's choice of words, I suppose. It's my words that I've used in the past and would like to use in the future. What it means is that we can't monitor every planning condition that's on every planning consent. It would be impossible. You would need a team of 100 people, possibly. Yeah. But where we know that members, the public, have had an interest in the site, a greater interest, perhaps, may I suggest, or is maybe an appeal decision where it's been slightly, the decision's been overturned and the inspectorate's put on some conditions. Maybe it could be a construction company that's well known to the council for not complying with its conditions. Those are the sort of types of things I'm trying to highlight and put some resource in to make sure that the council is monitoring the conditions that are likely, if that's the word, to cause harm to the environment and to the development. Does that help?
Yes, that's great. Thanks.
Sorry, I didn't mean to turn my back. Sorry, my apologies.
Councillor Slack.
I understand that, Councillor. I'm not in charge of the schedule and what applications you have to do with. I mean, if there's something to do with enforcement, you know, you're good enough to put me in front and allow that to be dealt with. I don't control the agenda, so I apologise. I can't answer that, sorry. I'm sure Chris or one of the members will address that shortly if they wish to. All right.
Please.
Councillor Lees.
Thank you, Chair. Gavin, we get quite a lot of retrospective applications. Is this something your team could be looking at when it gets the application comes in before it comes to ourselves, because you may have a better understanding of this retrospective application that for enforcement wise, rather than it come to a committee that takes up, like Councillor Slack said, it takes up a lot of time sometimes, where it's something that they could go through the right channels rather than coming to a retrospective application, getting refused, then coming back round the loop again. Is there something in between that could be done?
Well, Councillor Lees, I'll slap your hand first because you were at the training. I did explain this before, but I will go through it again. It's a long time, I accept. So, retrospective for applications are there. It's, the planning system's not meant to be punitive. It's not there to punish people, it's to resolve issues. And in planning enforcement, government guidance try to allow the council ways to try and resolve matters. Now, you know, you can take a view in any direction. 98% of the public, I would suggest to you, don't know much about planning. Okay, so they get on with what they think is right, and then they end up with an extension, a roof, a garden, an engineering operation that they didn't realise they needed to come to the council and get planning permission for. I suggest maybe 2 or 3% of the world do know. But you can't, you know, there is a judgment across that we try and resolve matters in planning and in enforcement. Now, if, you know, God bless her, my mum would put up a fence at 3 metres high and she didn't need planning permission, it would be very unreasonable to drag her through whatever enforcement process we took her for the sake of seeking any application that we might be able to regularise the development. It might be, you might need to say to them, well, we need a shorter extension, we need you to reduce the roof, we need you to do whatever. But if that application can be submitted retrospectively, it mustn't be looked as a negative thing, and I know members and sometimes officers do. It's not a negative thing. It's things that happen because the public do things wrong, unfortunately. And I'll just briefly finish because I don't want to waste your time. Government looked at this 5 or 6 years ago, maybe a bit longer now because I'm getting older in the tooth. Should they criminalise planning? And you may remember the debate. Well, you imagine everybody that would have a criminal record if they breached planning. It would be, we'd all be, well, I won't go there. So the point I'm trying to make to you is people... it certainly would make your life easy, and perhaps I could retire a bit earlier, but the point I'm trying to make to you is sometimes when there is a breach of planning, it's not as harmful that we would need to take action, so they have the opportunity to submit it. And I know members, when they see, and so do I, when you see retrospective application, they think, why could they not do it right in the first place? But the public and your residents and your constituents sometimes don't do it right. And they have sometimes the opportunity through employing an agent or speaking to our officers and say, well, this isn't acceptable as A, but if we do it as B and a retrospective application, members have the opportunity to try and correct this. So try and look at it not always as a negative, if I can dare suggest to you. It's not, I accept there's 2 or 3% of the world, yeah, you know, we could have that discussion anywhere, that will deliberately do it and submit a retrospective. I get that. But we know the difference in the department, and we know when it's time to act and when it's not. If I could say that to you, okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Does that help?
It does help, yeah, but what I was trying to get over was that we seem to get 1 or 2 consistent offenders, if you like, of this. You seem to know the loopholes. Yeah.
Well, that is counteracted, and I'll give you an example. There's an application coming in on a case, retrospective, which we're going to serve an enforcement notice at the same time, so the appeal's heard at the same time. So there's not so many delays on it, so there is improvements that way. So we do know, if we foresee it and we know the culprits, then we can act about it. I guess, definitely. Does that help you?
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay then, members, that the report has been moved and seconded. Our thanks to Mr. Treen for attending tonight. All those in favour of accepting the report, please show, and that appears to be unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. Cheers.
So we turn now to applications for determination, and the first application tonight pertains Stone Lodge, 180 Dale Road, Matlock Bath, and that is found on pages 13 to 26 of your agendas. And we've got, and I can find my list, some speakers. We've got 2 speakers pertaining this application. So can I first invite Emma Saxon, who I think we met when we had the site visit yesterday. I forgot, Robert, is it 3 minutes? Sorry, yeah, Emma, you've got 3 minutes. And it's the switch to your right, to the right. That's it, yeah.
Thank you. Chair and members, thank you for allowing me to speak. I live close to Stone Lodge, and I would like to make a small number of planning points informed both by the officer's report and by what members have now seen on site. First, the lawful baseline use. The officer's report confirms that there is no planning history for this site. Despite this, the proposal has been assessed as a change from a C1 to a C4, which impacts compared to a former bed and breakfast use. Historic operation does not in itself establish a lawful C1 without planning permission or a certificate of lawful use. As was observed at the site visit, the property is currently being marketed as a residential dwelling. On that basis, the realistic baseline is that of a house, and the proposal represents an intensification to a 6-person HMO. The impacts of that intensification on highways amenity, sustainability and character have therefore not been assessed on the correct baseline in this report. Secondly, the principle and suitability of the development. The site lies outside the settlement boundary in the countryside and occupies a prominent position on the A6 within a very busy tourist corridor. Even where the tilted balance applies, countryside policy still requires development to be appropriate and in type and intensity. In my submission, intensifying a single dwelling to a multi-occupancy HMO in this location is not appropriate or sustainable in principle. Third, highways and access. Members have seen firsthand that this is a very busy road, with no on-site turning provision and a shared driveway serving other properties. The proposal also relies on the creation of a new drop curb and altered access arrangements to serve parking directly from the A6. An HMO introduces multiple independent vehicle movements, servicing and deliveries. While highways officers raise no technical objection, members are entitled to imply their own planning judgment based on the site visit and consider whether this intensified use and the altered access required to support it would operate safely and satisfactorily in practice on such a constrained and busy section of road. Fourth, the condition of the building and biodiversity assumptions. Members noted the condition of the building, including the roof. The bat mitigation relies on the assumption and assertion of the owner that no roof disturbance will be required. However, conversion to HMO standards typically involves upgrades to ventilation, services and building fabric, in particular with this application involving the removal of existing and installation of new bathrooms. Planning policy requires potential impacts on protected species to be properly assessed at the decision stage rather than deferred or assumed. Finally, the use of conditions. I'm aware...
Unfortunately, Emma, you're going over time.
Oh,
now.
sorry.
Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Cheers.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And then Adam Nash, you're going to speak against the application. You two, Adam, have got 3 minutes.
There we go. Chair, members of the committee, I'm asking you to refuse this application because, despite the officer's recommendation, the proposal conflicts with the adopted local plan, the National Planning Policy Framework and key statutory duties under the Planning Act. Residents and the parish council have repeatedly raised legitimate concerns about noise, disruption and transient occupancy. These are not speculative. The officer's report itself confirms that previous HMOs on Dale Road have been closed by the local authority or police due to serious issues. Yet the report dismisses these concerns by claiming a 6-bed HMO is similar to a bed and breakfast. This is simply not correct. A B&B hosts short-term guests, often families with on-site management. An HMO houses unrelated adults with higher daily comings and goings and no permanent supervision. These differences in use intensity and behaviour patterns are material. To discard them risks a decision that would be in planning terms unreasonable, as relevant impacts have not been properly considered. Reducing the scheme to 6 bedrooms does not resolve its fundamental problems. The layout is cramped, heavily reliant on en-suites and offers very limited communal space. This raises concerns about the well-being of future occupants and fails to meet policies PD1 and HC11 of the adopted local plan, which require higher quality amenity and avoidance of adverse impacts. Stone Lodge is also identified as making a positive contribution to the Matlock Bath conservation area. Under Section 72 of the Planning Act, you have a strict duty to give special attention to preserving or enhancing the area's character. Case law confirms significant weight must be given to this duty, and even minor harm can justify refusal. Here, unresolved issues including boundary works, refuse storage and visual impact mean the applicant has not demonstrated that the conservation area will be preserved. The BAT survey found activity of potential roost features. Derbyshire Wildlife Trust recommend further nocturnal surveys where works may affect these areas. Under policy PD3 of the adopted local plan and the Natural Environment and Rural Communities Act, ecological harm must be fully addressed before permission is granted, not left to conditions. Parking and highway safety concerns also remain. The site sits directly onto the A6 with limited visibility, and even with revisited plans, intensification risks adding pressure to an already constrained highway environment. Policy HC19 of the adopted local plan requires development not to worsen on-street parking, and national policy states permission should be refused where highway safety is compromised. Members, you are not required to accept the officer's recommendation when the balance of planning judgment indicates clear risk of harm. This proposal presents unresolved issues relating to amenity, conservation, biodiversity and highway safety. For these reasons, I respectfully urge you to refuse planning permission.
Thank you very much, Adam, for your comments. You're well within time.
Oh, thank you.
And then, fine. Can I invite Councillor Matt Butler, who was speaking on behalf of the ward member, Councillor Nick Whitehead, who unfortunately can't be present, and as ward member he is allowed 5 minutes. So it's over to you, Matt.
Thanks very much. To Chair and members of the committee, thank you for allowing my statement to be read in my absence. I'm speaking as the ward member for Matlock Bath and Cromford regarding application 25000854 full. This proposal has generated significant concern within the local community, and I believe those concerns are well founded when considered against the Derbyshire Dales local plan. Number 1, cumulative impact and community balance. Matlock Bath is a very small settlement with a fragile balance of housing types. We already have several HMOs within a short stretch of Dale Road and the surrounding area. Residents are worried, reasonably, that another HMO risks tipping that balance. Local Plan Policy HC1, Location of Housing Development, requires development to contribute positively to the mix and balance of housing in a settlement. A further HMO in this location risks undermining that balance rather than supporting it. 2. Conservation area and local character. Stone Lodge sits within the Matlock Bath Conservation Area. The local plan is clear that development must preserve or enhance the character and appearance of such areas. Policy PD1, Design and Placemaking, requires development to respect the character, appearance and local context of the area. Policy PD2, Heritage Assets, requires proposals to conserve or enhance heritage significance. Residents have expressed deep concern that the intensification of use from a small B&B to a multi-occupancy dwelling is not compatible with the historic character of this part of the village. The conservation area is one of Matlock Bath's defining features, and decisions here must be especially sensitive. Point 3, residential amenity. The local plan is explicit that development must not harm the amenity of existing residents. Policy PD1 requires protection of privacy, noise environment, general living conditions, and HMOs by their nature can generate high levels of comings and goings, noise and disturbance. In a tightly packed residential area like this, the impact on neighbours is likely to be significant. Residents have already experienced issues linked to other HMOs in the area, including noise and antisocial behaviour. While not all HMOs cause problems, the pattern of concern is relevant and the committee is entitled to consider it. Point 4, highway safety and parking. Stone Lodge has extremely limited parking. The A6 at this point is a 40-mile-an-hour road with double yellow lines and no safe on-street parking. The side road next to the property is steep, narrow and has poor visibility. Policy HC19, Accessibility and Transport, requires development to provide safe access and adequate parking. Policy S7, Matlock Bath, emphasises the need to protect the special character and manage traffic impacts carefully. Residents are rightly concerned that intensifying the use of this building will worsen an already difficult situation. Point 5, antisocial behaviour and local services. While planning cannot assume future behaviour, it can consider the known impact of similar uses in the area, the pressure on local services, the suitability of the location for a more intensive residential use. Residents have reported historic issues with other HMOs in Matlock Bath, including police call-outs and antisocial behaviour. This is not speculation, it is lived experience. The committee is entitled to consider whether this location is appropriate for a use that has, elsewhere in the village, generated challenges. Point 6, ecology and protected species. Concerns have been raised about the presence of bats. Policy PD3, biodiversity and the natural environment, requires development to protect and enhance biodiversity and ensure that protected species are not harmed. Any uncertainty around ecological impact should weigh against approval until fully resolved. To conclude, taken together, the concerns raised by residents align directly with the local plan. HC1, housing mix and balance. PD1, design, amenity and character. PD2, heritage and conservation. PD3, biodiversity. HC19, highway safety and parking. S7, protecting the special character of Matlock Bath. This is not a case of resisting change for its own sake. It is a case of ensuring that development is appropriate, proportionate and sensitive to the unique context of Matlock Bath. For these reasons, I respectfully ask members to refuse this application. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you very much, Matt. Now, Chelsea, are you? Yeah. I'll invite the case officer now, Chelsea Johnson, to present the report, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So planning permission is sought for the conversion of the existing B&B, used class C1 at 180 Dale Road, into a HMO, used class C4, along with associated external alterations. The site comprises Stone Lodge, which is an unlisted building within the conservation area. The site is located along the A6 between Matlock and Matlock Bath and is accessed directly from the A6. It is a detached building set within its own plot and comprises a mixture of hard standing, a series of paths and mature vegetation. As set out previously, the proposal involves the conversion of the existing 5-bed B&B into a 6-bed HMO. All rooms would be occupied by one person only. Officers initially raised concerns in relation to the living conditions for the future occupants. As a result, the architect has submitted amended plans, and the revisions to the layout increase the overall communal living accommodation through removing a bedroom at ground floor. So the application originally came in as a 7-bed, which has now been reduced to a 6-bed HMO. Cycle storage is provided in the garage, and 3 car parking spaces are now proposed off Dale Road. The layout shown on the screen now meets the space standards as set out by the Council's amenity and space standards for HMOs for 6 separate households. And actually the bedrooms, all of the bedrooms and the proposed kitchen and dining area exceeds the standards recommended. So a key change is that the development is no longer classified as a sui generis HMO, which is 7 or more bedrooms, and instead falls under a use class C4 for up to 6 occupants. This is seen as a residential use, and the government has purposely established this use to distinguish between small HMOs and larger HMOs, which are considered to be more problematic within certain areas. No objections have been received from any of the statutory consultees, including the Highway Authority and Derbyshire Wildlife Trust. The Council's Conservation Officer and Environmental Health Officer have not raised any objections either. And as you've heard this evening, a number of concerns have been raised by local residents. These have all been adequately addressed within the case officer's report. Concerns relating to biodiversity have been addressed. DWT initially requested a bot survey. This has been provided, and DWT have confirmed they've no objection. They've recommended further surveys should any works be proposed to the roof, but the applicant and the architect have confirmed that no works are proposed to the roof. So we're satisfied that there will be no impact on any protected species. Similarly, the Conservation Officer has reviewed the proposals and confirmed no objection. Just the proposal. Minimal, as shown on the screen, there's no minimal external alterations are proposed. I think there's two external fence being proposed on one side elevation, and one fence proposed on the front elevation. A small section of the boundary wall also fronting the highway will be removed, but again our Conservation Officer has confirmed that it will not impact on the conservation area. And just to summarise, the proposal would not result in a significant loss of amenity for residents of neighbouring properties, and it would achieve adequate amenity for future occupants. There wouldn't be any adverse highway safety implications, and there wouldn't be any impact on biodiversity. The proposal is considered to be policy compliant, and a recommendation for approval is recommended on this basis.
Now, members, we had a very useful site visit yesterday. Please bear in mind that we're at the point where we ask questions, we don't make long statements. So the first person that's indicated who would like to ask a question is Councillor Hughes. So over to you, David, then Councillor Peter Dobbs.
Thank you, Chair. I've got three separate questions. I was going to ask about the front wall, but I'll come back in debate about the front wall. In terms of my questions, the first one is I don't really understand why Highways didn't comment on this or didn't find it acceptable. On other occasions, we had one application last time, which was included conditions from Highways about coming onto the site and off the site in forward direction. And this was from a road where about 7 cars go along it a day. Whereas in this case, we've got 7 cars a minute, or perhaps more than that, going past at 40 miles an hour in both directions. And they're going to allow cars to reverse on or off the site. So that would mean the cars had to stop on the road, engage reverse gear and reverse onto the site, or do the same thing or go onto the site and then in a forward motion, then come off, reverse onto a main road. I don't understand how that is not a safety hazard. My next question is about the BAT survey whereas there may be no changes to the roof, but are there going to be changes to the loft space, for example, for putting in ventilation systems for the bathrooms or anything like that? Because the bats won't necessarily roost in the roof itself, but they could be in the loft. the third question is about the base use class. And is that the base use class residential use, or is it the current use in terms of the bed and breakfast accommodation?
Okay, Chelsea.
Yeah, thank you. So in terms of the highways, they've been consulted on the application twice. So they reviewed the initial plans that came in, which was for a 7-bed HMO, and yeah, they confirmed that no objection. Then they were reconsulted again on a 6-bed, and I mean they're the technical experts on highway safety. So I mean we couldn't recommend refusal on that basis, given they're satisfied and confirmed that there would be no implications.
And the other two question 2 and 3.
Yeah, in terms of the bot survey, I mean the applicant and the architect has confirmed that there's no works to the roof. I assume this means the loft as well. And again, DWT have confirmed they've no objections. DWT have actually spoke to the ecologist who prepared the bot survey, and they're content. And the applicant is aware, and the architect, should any works, future works, be needed to the roof, that they would need more surveys, and they've confirmed that in their consultation response.
You okay with that, David, at this point?
Can I just ask?
Final question.
Well, it's really to do with the response.
It's got to be a question, David.
Yeah, about highways. Can we defer and ask highways to have a look at it with our concerns? Because I think there are a number of members who might have concerns about reversing onto the road there, which is the A6, the trunk road, and that just does not seem to be a sensible thing to be able to do.
Chris, could you come in, please, at this point?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, obviously, it's within the gift of the committee to vote to defer the application. I'm not sure you would get a different response from Highways, given that we've just heard that they've been consulted twice in relation to this application. So, I mean, my advice would be, if the committee has concerns about highway safety, that those be something that, well, the officer recommendation is clearly for approval based on Highways not having objected to the application, but it's for the committee to come to its own view on these matters, is my advice.
Thank you. Councillor Dobbs and then Councillor Burford.
Sorry, the last question was about the base standard for the whether it's residential accommodation we're thinking of as the base standard here.
I'll respond to that if that's okay. So it's come in as a conversion of a bed and breakfast, which is use class C1. That is a long established use. I mean, we acknowledge in our report that there's no relevant history for this site, but obviously our electronic records only go back so far. I'm not sure how long this was a bed and breakfast. I understand it was for a very long time. And what our principal concern is with the application, our principal consideration is whether the change of use to a C4 use is acceptable. So it's as a bed and breakfast, that's also a C-class use, which is residential, as is the HMO that it's proposed to go for, which is the C4, and residential house is C3. So they're all residential uses of sorts.
Okay, Councillor Dobbs and then Councillor Burfoot. Does anyone else wish to come in? Laura, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I did have an overlap with what David's asked, but just to tease out a little bit about the baseline situation, what difference would it make? Are you effectively saying, Rosie, what we just said, that actually, even if it wasn't bed and breakfast as approved, it wouldn't really significantly alter the decision-making process that we have before us this evening?
I don't think it does, because we're looking at the proposed use. Obviously, we know as a bed and breakfast that there would have been a lot of people there and comings and goings, so whether you bear that in mind when making the decision on this application about what the previous baseline was for the site, but obviously it's empty at the moment.
Thank you. My second question kind of moves into that quite well, because this is the highway situation. Presumably, as we saw on the site visit, it will be almost inevitable that current B&B users, if there were any, would be doing one of the manoeuvres, as it were, in a less than approved way, shall we say. Would highways have taken that on board, existing practice, in making their recommendation, or would it be irrelevant?
I mean, they didn't specify within their consultation response whether they, I mean, it's assumed that they take on board the existing site conditions on use, but it's not explicit within their consultation response.
Thank you. And is it working? Yes. Running on from that, in your professional experience, would this be something where, if this went to appeal, if we refused it and it went to appeal, would this be something that would be difficult or easy to defend, this highways issue of parking?
Chris?
Chair, with your permission. It's a difficult one because, as you've alluded to, there is a baseline condition, and I suppose the issue is how much the change of use would affect the situation, given that a B&B would cause the same issue. I think it's always difficult where the Highways Authority have come to view to defend an appeal that goes against that view. But I do also understand the concerns that have been raised about reversing onto what is quite a main road. So I'd say my advice is, as I say, it's difficult to defend appeals where the Highways advice is a particular way, but I do think this is a rather unusual situation, put it that way.
If I come quickly back, Chair, I mean, if we refused it and it then became a B&B again, wouldn't there be a problem? Because without changing the parking.
I think that's a very good point, and that's. I mean, obviously, officers have made a recommendation, and these are part of the considerations that officers have considered as in terms of making the recommendation. We always look at the baseline position, so hence the recommendation that we're making. So I think yes, that is it is a strong point.
Councillor Burfoot, then Laura, then Councillor Slack and Stewart. So Councillor Burfoot.
Thank you, Chair. There is a question here, honestly. A little bit of a preamble. We all know, don't we, as members of the Planning Committee, that we have to consider material planning considerations. There are three that I've flagged up. One of them that I'm not, well, the question really is, have we considered these? So the first one is loss of family housing. This presumably was a family house at one point, then became a B&B. I'm not sure about that. The second planning consideration that I understand we probably need to consider is the parking, well, I'm calling it parking stress, but I suppose it's to do with highway issues. But the other one is saturation, and that was brought up by Councillor Whitehead in his contribution. And that's to do with evidence in the area, that the area already has a high density of HMOs, which could harm the community's balance and cohesion. Now, Councillor Whitehead mentions several HMOs within a short stretch of Dale Road and the surrounding area. Now, I really do not know how many HMOs there are in that particular area, but do we know how many there are, and is that something we ought to know before we make any decision, and could that be another reason for a deferral?
Chris?
Thank you, Chair. I think we are fairly confident that there are three additional HMOs in the area. In officers' view, that would not be sufficient to refuse on grounds of over-concentration, because the bar is quite a lot higher than that in my experience. If, for example, you had a situation where you had a residential street and quite a number of the houses on that street had been converted to HMO, and that was causing problems on the street in terms of noise, disturbance, car parking, etc., that could perhaps be a valid grounds for refusal. But given we're talking about 3 additional HMOs over in the neighbourhood, but over what is quite a wide area, I don't think that would be a grounds that would stand up to appeal, is my professional opinion on that point.
Let's come back. So is that a judgment? Who would make that judgment as to what becomes saturation point? Given that Matlock Bath in that particular area is quite a small area, really. Who's making that judgment?
Chris?
Chair, it's obviously for the local planning authority to make that judgment. Officers have come to a view on it. Obviously, it's for the committee to come to its own view. I can only give you what officers' advice is on that.
Thank you. Actually, I was going to ask the question that Sue just asked, but my other question is, one of the speakers mentioned that this property is actually outside the settlement boundary, and I just wondered if that was correct, and if so, does that affect the position?
Can you clarify that, please, Chelsea?
Yeah, that is correct. So we've considered that in 7.5 of our case officer's report. That the site is within the countryside, although it is adjacent to the settlement boundary of Matlock, which is tier 1 settlement, and also Matlock Bath. And policy S4 allows for new residential development on edge of settlements, where there is no 5-year housing land supply, which is currently the case.
Are you okay with that? Councillor Slack?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not defending highways in no way. This question is looking at the people that occupy it. It'll be probably young people, single people, men and women, maybe some couples, but mostly it'll be people who can come out and catch buses. And this is a good bus route, by the way, excellent bus route. And maybe people who haven't got vehicles. I think we are assuming that everyone's got a vehicle. A lot of these people won't have vehicles. So I think highways have probably looked into that area and think they probably that 50% will only have vehicles. Is that probably a fact why highways have come to this decision?
Yeah, I think they probably have picked up on that point, because in their initial consultation response, they were concerned that no bicycle parking was provided. So when the revised plans came in, 6 spaces have now been provided within the garage. So it is in a sustainable location, and yeah.
Councillor Stuart Lees and then Councillor John Boynton.
Thank you, Chair. So a reduction of 1 bedroom, Chelsea, does that mean the difference of a parking space is one question? Because we've just gone down 1 bedroom, it's reduced that. My other question is, we've spoke about the roof, no disturbance to the roof area. Have we got a method statement that states that there's going to be no work in the roof area? Because I can't see for myself, are they going to do all the electrical work, insulation work, without disturbing that roof area or loft area? Have we got a method statement or a structural report? Because the roof didn't look too good as we looked at it yesterday. So I can't see how they can do such a development without incorporating some roof work. So could you just have clarification whether that reducing 1 bedroom has reduced a parking space, really?
Thank you, Stuart. Can those 2 questions be?
Yeah, so just on the second question, we haven't received any structural report. We've just got what's in front of us, which is the proposed plans. Obviously, the architect is aware of the issue with bots, and they've confirmed that no works are proposed, and that's what DWT are satisfied with. If they had concerns, I suppose they would have requested one themselves. And again, a service works to dwell and don't necessarily require planning permission. So that would be a separate issue.
We should come back, Stuart.
Yeah, I think so. Basically, if we do allow this, then we're ignoring all the work, the disturbance to such things as bats, just because we're giving it permission to alter from a house, in effect, to a HMO. So I can't see why we shouldn't have some legislation that states this work.
Chris? Yeah.
Chair, I think it would be perfectly reasonable to address that point by way of a condition, added to any grant of permission, if the committee were minded to grant permission, stating that no work shall be carried out to the roof of the dwelling without submission of the surveys recommended, for nocturnal surveys, or simply, I mean, to be honest, even simply a condition that no work should be carried out to the roof of the dwelling, and the reason is to protect, to ensure no disturbance to protected species. I think that could be addressed by condition.
Thank you. And my car parking issue, does reducing one bedroom remove a parking space or not?
I think, as we touched on before, there's a certain amount with this application is based on what the baseline situation is there. So obviously there's only those 3 car parking spaces there. Obviously by being 6 bedrooms it would be less pressure than a 7-bedroom HMO. But as Chelsea said before, the Highway Authority have said that's sufficient given the location with the bus routes, and they've asked for cycle parking as well.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just trying to get my head around why 1 bedroom difference has made a difference to the Highways report, and I can't see as it could make any difference really.
Yeah. Can I bring in Councillor John Boynton for your questions, please, John?
Thank you. I've picked up on the concern for antisocial behaviour in the area, which I understand. I just wondered, have we liaised with environmental health in relation to incidents involving the HMOs in the nearby area, or perhaps is that a reason for deferral to liaise with environmental health, or maybe obtain information in relation to incidents of antisocial behaviour from the police, maybe under the Freedom of Information Act?
Yeah, so we have consulted environmental health on the application. They've confirmed, as already mentioned, that there's 3 HMOs in the area, 2 of which are licensed, 1 which isn't. And this property, if converted, would be subject to HMO licenses, which means it's subject to further checks from EHO officers and further conditions relating to antisocial behaviour.
Okay, I think that answers my question, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Now, there's been some good questions raised, but I'd like us now to move into debate. So, members, I need a motion. Questions?
No, can I move the motion?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be moved now by Councillor Peacock.
So I'd like to move to accept the officer recommendations and approve this, subject to the condition just suggested about the roof space. I think we have I can see that there are some issues, but I think we have a legal obligation to consider that the fact that we don't have a 5-year housing supply, as we all know. I think we also have a moral obligation to consider the fact that what we're really lacking in this whole area, and what Matlock is definitely lacking, is affordable housing for young people. And if we want young people to continue to live in the area, we cannot just insist that everything is a family home, especially not a 6-bedroom family home. I think we need this. It looks, I mean, I've lived in HMOs before. I think this one looks quite nice, as long as it's reasonably spacious. It's quite a lot better than some of them. And I think, on balance, we should accept it.
Does that find a seconder? Councillor Slack, do you wish to speak?
Yes, Chair. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Peacock. This is, I think everybody's taking it for granted that everybody's going to have a car. A lot of young people haven't got cars. They can't afford to run into one. And there's a good bus service. So I think this issue of cars there won't be a major issue, personally. I think there'll be a lot of people without cars there. And young people, same as Councillor Peacock said, young people need houses, they need somewhere to live. And we've got to find that places for young people and single people. So I think there's a great need of the HMSOs. What they do also, they don't take, same as holiday lets take up houses from villages, where these don't. These are taking up what used to be bed and breakfast accommodation. So I think, yeah, it's very good, and I think it's a way forward. But looking at the building, there's a lot of work to do. Yeah, a lot of work to do. But I'm for the application. Thank you, Chair.
So, members, it's been moved and seconded. Now, please, we need a debate. So, Councillor Dobbs, then Councillor Burfoot.
No, I didn't.
Right, okay.
No.
Councillor
Not
Dobbs.
Thank you, Chair. Just to reinforce the point about single-person accommodation, I mean, Matlock Bath, a tourist centre, hospitality-orientated. Hospitality is driven typically by young single people. Where are we expecting them to live to run the tourist businesses in Matlock Bath? Would you expect them to come in by bus from Derby? That would seem to be unnecessarily expensive if there's something appropriately inexpensive, which an HMO would presumably provide in the area. It obviously is difficult, but I think the issues about potential noise, antisocial behaviour, are something essentially for licensing. These can be successfully run, and that is essentially a licensing area, and probably not one where we should necessarily weight terribly heavily in this context of planning. So yes, Chair, I'm happy to support this officer's advice. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dobbs. Does any other member wish to speak? If not, we do have a motion moved and seconded that we support the officer recommendation to grant planning permission. Will members please clearly show all those in favour? Against? And abstentions? So the motion is carried. Thank you. We move then to our second application on page 27. This again we visited yesterday, the Knockerdown Inn, and it pertains the retention and configuration of caravan site, erection of toilet and shower block and chemical toilet disposal and extension of car park. And again I'd like to, don't think we've got any speakers for or against this application, so I'd like to bring in the case officer, please.
Thank you, Chair. So planning permission is sought for the retention and reconfiguration of the existing caravan site, including the erection of a toilet and shower block and an extension of the existing car park at the Knockerdown Inn. The site itself comprises the public house and the associated existing car park together with the adjoining fields. The Knockerdown Inn is a public house and restaurant, and the adjacent field has historically been in use as an informal camping and caravan park. The site is located within the countryside to the west of Carsington Visitor Centre and lies about 1 kilometre north to the settlement of Hockneston. If I just go to the proposed site layout, so the main elements of the proposal include an extension into the joining field to provide an additional 24 car parking spaces, the formalisation of the existing caravan site to include 33 surface pitches, accessed off a new track, and the erection of a toilet and shower block, and a chemical disposal. In terms of the site access, the access arrangements would remain partly as existing. Traffic access in the caravan site would enter through the existing access serving the public house to the north of the site, and then traffic from both the caravan site and public house would exit via the new access to the south, constructed under previous planning permission. So essentially, yeah, it would be a one-way system. Policy S4 supports the sustainable growth of tourism, providing it does not impact on the character and appearance of the rural area and does not lead to excessive encroachment or expansion away from the original buildings. As you can, I don't know how clear it is, but I suppose minimal built development is proposed. There is a shower block and some facilities, but they are positioned to the rear, slightly south of the existing Knockerdown Inn, to minimise any potential impact on the landscape. Yeah, and if I go to the next slide. Yeah, so this next slide shows the proposed shower block and toilets. And as mentioned, these would be located to the rear of the existing building in order to minimise any impact on the landscaping. It's considered that views of this building would be filtered by existing hedgerows and trees surrounding the site, and further screened or filtered by the public house itself. It's considered that these facilities are proportionate with the scale and function of the caravan and camping field, in line with policy EC9. No objections have been received from any residents or parish council or any of the statutory consultees. Several conditions have been recommended by the LLFA in relation to surface water, and conditions have also been recommended by Derbyshire Wildlife Trust in relation to protected species, biodiversity enhancements, and safeguarding existing trees and hedgerows. The development will achieve the mandatory net gain, and a section 106 has been drafted to secure off-site gains directly to the west of the site. And overall, the proposals seek to improve the on-site facilities to facilitate the sustainable growth of an existing tourism enterprise, as well as contributing towards the viability of the existing public house. It's considered that the proposed development would deliver economic benefits through maintaining visitor numbers within the area, as well as benefits to local villages nearby.
Thank you. Councillor Murphy, would you like to ask some questions?
Please.
Yeah. Does anyone else after Dermot wish to ask any questions from yesterday's site visit? Councillor Burfoot. Okay, fire away. Dermot.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chelsea. How many parish councils did we write to?
I believe it was one.
Right, I've seen that one. I've had contact from a few of the other parish councils close to the area, and they're saying they haven't been consulted on this application. When there've been previous applications for this particular site, they've been very involved and sharing their opinions. Knifeton, Hogmaston and Brassington have seen no consultation on this application. We are actually calling it a major application. They've got concerns about highways issues. Is that something we would normally have done and it's been forgotten? Or
in my experience, we would only normally consult the parish council.
okay. I think with an application like this and the scale of the application, I think it's incumbent on us to contact. There's parishes nearer to this site than Carsington, and you know they would like to share their views. Is there any way that we can look at actually involving them in this decision? Because on the basis of this, what you're telling us tonight, I would probably ask that we defer this application so a greater number of parishes could actually have a contribution. Is that possible, Chris?
I mean, it's a matter of the committee whether the item is deferred or not. The local parish council was consulted. That would be the normal procedure. The application's been with us for some time. It's been advertised. It's been on the local list. Neighbours have been notified. So the information has been out there for some time that this application has been submitted to the council. So I don't feel procedurally there's been any error in terms of processing the application. Ultimately, it's a matter for the committee to take a view on whether it should be deferred or not.
I've been contacted by a couple of other residents of the area who live very close, and they were never consulted either. So, I mean, there's a limit to how many people you can consult, but they live next door, basically, and they were never consulted. So I think we've got a weakness in this application from that point of view. I'm pro-business, but I'm pro sort of allowing the the people in the area, the residents, to have a say.
Dermot, can I just ask from the chair, in terms of, you say a couple of people quite close to the Knockerdown Inn, surely there would have been a displayed notices to inform people that this application had been submitted?
We had a problem with this before on an application when they put these displays up, these yellow notices for people to sort of read and whatever. They're often just outside the Knockerdown on the side of the building on the busy B5035, and rarely anybody walks along that section of the highway. You take your life in your hands. So, that's not always a very useful way to actually spread the news.
No, that's a fair point. Yeah. Can I just move to other questions and then we can perhaps...
Yeah, can I ask one?
Absolutely.
I note it says here retention and reconfiguration. Well, I understand the reconfiguration, but retention, that sort of says that, to me, that this site has already had some sort of permission for these caravans. Well, from looking back, it's never had any permission. You're making that point, but I've only ever seen 4 or 5 caravans ever parked there. Lots of camping, tents and whatever. And you look at the scale of this, you're looking at 33 pitches and whatever, and it fills the site. I do think we need to garner some sort of input from the locals as to their thoughts on this, because at the end of the day, it's not the traffic movements that's going to be the issue. It's the type of traffic, and it's going to be slow-moving caravans pulling out onto the B5035. The accident record on that section of road is not great, and we used that before on other applications, and you know, we could almost do with a change in the speed limit on that section of road if we're going to look at pulling caravans out onto that that roadway, because people, you know, they do fly around that road, and it can be an issue. So I'd ask this to be sort of deferred, and I know this is not the time to do that, but that's my feeling at this stage, unless you can tell me something.
Okay, I think we'll leave that for a little later. In terms of questions, Councillor Burfoot. Anyone else in terms of questions? Councillor Hughes and then Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. I think mine's a straightforward question. I notice under the observations from Carsington and Hopton Parish Council, they note that it is important that the footpath access remains in place. I can't see it in the conditions, but have I missed something?
I think it's, we have considered that because we consulted the rights of way officer and we received an amended plan to ensure that the development wouldn't impact on that public right of way. It's at the southwestern corner. We don't have a condition, but we have an informative which states that the route must be unobstructed, and that's a standard procedure that we would take on public rights of way.
Oh, so there's no prospect that could be blocked?
Well, initially I think it was a hedge of one of the pitches that kind of touched it, but we received amended plans and that's been addressed.
Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, we could make it a condition. Oh, questions. Oh, sorry. Questions. There's quite a number of caravans there. It'll be good. I'll have to come back in debate for some of it. But my question probably is there a possibility that we could contact Highways to alter the speed limit? Is that possible? Because the same as caravans drawing out onto roads like that, 40 miles an hour is a bit too much in that area. Could we consult Highways to look at it?
It's 50 miles an hour.
60 miles?
50.
50, so it's far too high, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we need to consult Highways on that issue.
Is that okay, Chris?
The other issues I'll come back in debate.
Yeah, Highways have been consulted on the application and they've confirmed they've no objection to the development or the use.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hughes and then Councillor Lees.
Thank you, Chair. This is for Chris, I think. If we defer, we're going to extend the period by another period for the statutory consultation of these other parishes. I'm a bit concerned because we were already lost 6 months of this application to from April last year to October last year. Because we were waiting for the Flood Authority to respond to the application. I'm concerned. Should I be concerned about non-determination of this application and loss of the right to do so to the Planning Inspectorate?
Chair, that is a risk. There is a risk of the applicant appealing on non-determination. I can see that an extension of time has been agreed, although I don't know to what date. 13th. So the 13th of February. So after that period, the applicant could apply on non-determination. I think there's also a question over what's reasonable in terms of this is an application that's been submitted in good faith. The consultation will have been taken. There was a press notice published on 8th January. And in terms of the neighbour consultation, that will have been done in accordance with the Council's statement of community involvement, which says for major applications which are not EIA applications such as this, there'll be a site notice and neighbour letters for sites within 20 metres of the site. So that's the process. I understand that people beyond that zone may have concerns, but ultimately there is a process in place, and I'm not aware of any breach of that process as things stand. Obviously, I would emphasise it is for the committee to decide, but my advice would be against deferral tonight.
A further question, David?
Well, in that case, I'd like to move this. Officer recommendations.
Yeah, just hang on, because Councillor Lees wishes to ask a question. and then we'll perhaps move to...
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, mine again, highways has been brought up again. Obviously, if we wanted to reduce the speed limit on that piece of road, we're looking at a 2-year period, aren't we? But could we impose a condition that some traffic calming signs could be put up, or does that go through the highways department just the same? Yeah, just some calming measures, or is it, i.e. just signage, like, you know, or does that require highways approval?
I thought it was highways, wasn't it? Yeah. I mean, I would have thought it was highways, Stuart, to be honest. So,
go about it then.
Other than convey the view of the planning committee that, you know, perhaps they would get out and have a look and reassess because of the reasons that members have expressed.
Yeah. Well, no, it is a 50 mile an hour limit, but that 50
fast.
mile an hour limit is mostly 60 mile an hour.
Yeah, yeah.
So it is a fast piece of road.
Chris?
So Chair, there is a condition 14, that requires, prior to the caravan site being brought into use, a package of signs, markings, one-way flaps for the corner, for the one-way system shall be submitted for approval. Once approved, they shall be fully implemented on site and maintained thereafter. Now that is, I would emphasise that's internal to the site, so that's to make sure that the one-way system operates. The Highways Authority were very clear that the way this site can operate is with egress taking place from the southerly access, because that's where the visibility space meet the highways requirements. So that's the reason for that condition. In terms of conditions, imposing condition for highway signs to be put up, that isn't something that we can control, because it's the Highways Authority that would be responsible for putting any such signs up, and it would be on their land. So the local planning authority doesn't have the power to make the applicant put signage up, formal highway signage, but it does have the ability to control signage on the site, which is what condition 14 seeks to do.
Do you have a final question, Stuart?
Yeah, just like, so basically this planning committee then wouldn't be held responsible should accidents start to happen with caravans pulling out. It would be the highways problem, not this planning committee's problem for giving it permission.
That would have been my understanding, certainly, yeah. So it has been formally moved by Councillor Hughes. Sorry?
Can I just say something as well?
As mover? Yeah, and I need a seconder, please. And it's been seconded by Councillor Dobbs. Please, David.
Well, it's fairly simple. I mean, all the concern seems to be about highways, and the visibility displays will be specified by the county council to meet the speed limit of the road. So the visibility displays will allow visibility for a car going or a truck going 50 miles an hour, and that is probably reasonable. And would be consistent with whatever else is done in the county. So I can't see that access and exit is a material planning consideration in this case. Therefore, we're really looking at the overall site itself and whether we like that. And it seems that it is an opportunity to regularise the current use and provide a source of employment, local employment.
Councillor Dobbs.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm happy to second this. I think we shouldn't lose sight that this is an upgrade of something that's in use at the moment, and indeed this new arrangement for getting in and out has already been subject to a planning application and approval by Highway. So in the sense, caravans coming off this site, as well as cars from the pub, has been through that process. It is a worthwhile improvement, and I think it should sort of professionalise, I think, what happens here. And I think actually the total number of pitches is not hugely dissimilar to what currently exists somewhat informally on grass, as we saw in the site visit. So I'm happy to second it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Slack.
Thank you. I agree with the mover and the seconder. I think this site will be very, very good site. It's will bring a lot of tourists in. I mean, Carsington's been a growing concern for many, many years. Originally, Carsington wasn't built for a tourist attraction. It was built to save water for Derby and Nottingham originally, but it became a tourist attraction. It's grown and grown, and I think we shouldn't stifle the growth. I think we should encourage it. I mean, we need a local economy to build on these sort of things, and we should not turn us back on this sort of thing. We should encourage it. And I think it's a very good site, as Councillor Dobbs has already said. It's a good site, and it's the new access on the other way is much improved. But it's if we shall find any accidents, Highways will have to look at that situation, won't we? Because it's not a planning issue. The Highways have taken that over, so that's their responsibility. But I think we shouldn't stifle growth in any way. We should look for more growth. Thank you, Chair.
Members, can I test the motion that's before us, and then if it fails, Dermot, you will be able to, if you wish to speak.
I hear your arguments and whatever, and this is a major growth in this site, and we're not asking the local people, not enough of them are actually getting an opportunity to share their views, and for me that's not democracy. And you know, it is in open countryside. I don't understand why people are not of a mind that we give, you know, these local parishes and whatever the opportunity to speak. We've had an application on this site previously concerning the exit. A parish council was written to, asked about it, and the exit was going to be out onto the dam road. Because a local farmer said no way, there was a major change to that application, and they put it out onto this B5035, which is a dangerous section of highway, and we were told we're timed out and we couldn't contest that. You know, I dread to think what the local people are going to think now. Here we go again. You know, you've not bothered to contact the local parishes. This will affect on a weekend. That's a very busy road. You've got cyclists, you've got horse riders, you've got walkers, never mind the traffic. And then you've got caravans pulling out, in and out of there. I mean, good comments about contacting the highways, talking about possibly asking them about maybe speed restrictions or whatever. People have died on that piece of road, and we've had serious accidents. And there's all the accidents we don't even know about because they don't get reported. I don't think we're interrogating this hard enough, really, in the sense, you know, we could be in time talking about a fatality. I beggars believe. But it's democracy. You all have to get your say, and you get to vote the way you want. But the argument that this application is taking far too long. I'm sorry, you know. The safety of individuals comes a bit higher up the scale for me than that.
Thank you, Dermot.
Thank you.
Bringing one of the ward members now, Councillor Lucy Peacock.
I just wanted to respond to that. I do think you have a point, Dermot. I think we should review which councils we consult with in where it's a countryside application. However, I don't feel that it would be fair on the applicant or anybody involved to delay this one further for that reason. For traffic, I agree that it's a dangerous section of road, but I don't particularly see that because you can see from there. I'm not sure that, I think in I think it might be one of those situations where actually the existence of caravans is going to have the effect of slowing the traffic rather than making it more dangerous. It's not necessarily going to make it more dangerous. There'll be more traffic and there'll be slower traffic. It will potentially stop people speeding as much as they currently do. I don't think that's necessary. If highways don't object, presumably they've done their sums that suggest that, or that it will be the same. I don't want you to think that we're ignoring risk. I just disagree that there is such a risk. That's what I'm saying.
The statistics would tell you differently. We did do a big exercise looking at the statistics for accidents and deaths on that section of road. It's data that the police provide to the county council that is the only advice that the county council will use when they're considering these sort of things. But you know, I'm sorry to say, and there's other county councillors who would say, I don't think the county is thorough enough on these sort of applications, you know, and I'm often, and maybe not on this one, but there's others where we often wonder in this committee, have they ever actually gone to site and have they actually really looked at it, or is it just a desktop exercise or whatever? But I just hope nothing happens to anybody you know, on that because of a caravan or whatever. So.
Okay, can I test then the feeling of the meeting, because it's been moved and seconded that planning permission is granted. All those in favour, please show. Against? Abstentions? So that is carried. Thank you. Do members wish to have a break at this point? Are you okay? You're okay? Yeah. So if we just take a break for about 5 minutes, please, and then we'll reconvene. Thank you. Right, members, we'll proceed to the third application, which again was our final site visit yesterday, and that pertains 4 Sycamore Road, Matlock, replacement roof to dwelling involving increasing height and alteration to roof pitch, installation of 2 dormer windows to rear, new window to south elevation and fixed roof light to front elevation to facilitate a loft conversion. And if I've got it right, the first person to speak on behalf of some local residents against the application is Mr. Eric Swain. And Eric, when you're ready, you've got 3 minutes. Peter, can you just show Eric where the switch? Yeah.
First of all, can I thank members for the site visit and the way they accepted that I asked them to look through a bedroom window to get a better perspective of what this application truly means to the people who are going to be affected by it. And I'll say to start with that this is a forever and a permanent harm that will be done to the residents of the area, the neighbours. I've got 2 specific points from an appeal decision from the inspectorate, and I think they relate very well to this application. The proposal would harm the living conditions of the occupiers of neighbouring properties, and as such would conflict with policy PD1 of the local plan, which requires, amongst other things, development to provide a satisfactory relationship to adjacent development and not cause overlooking or being overbearing. And whilst the proposal would not alter the footprint of the building, it's very clear that this proposal would result in the property having a bulky and top-heavy appearance, and as such the extended dwelling would be viewed, I think, by anybody with a reasonable point of view as incompatible with the proportions of the surrounding areas. I'm just glad it's an application that doesn't apply to my neighbourhood. The harms done will be forever and permanent. Bulk, height, overlooking, overbearing. The scale and form would be harmful to the street scene and the site's wider setting and location. The proposal would unacceptably dominate the outlook from the objectors' properties and severely affect the privacy of their gardens. The harms caused by this proposal cannot be mitigated in my view, and as such they would lead to a conflict with policy PD1, which is a flagship policy that I know that this council guards very jealously, and I absolutely agree. Other matters relate to a satisfactory relationship. I would suggest to you that this would not be a satisfactory relationship. The proposal is to increase the height by 2.2 metres. In English money, 7'3". And if you look at that door, or that door, the increase is 9 inches above the door. And is very, very substantial. There's absolutely no question in my mind. And that to me is extraordinary. It's in conflict with the development plan.
Eric, I'm sorry I've got to interject because I've given you a little bit more time.
All right.
It is...
right.
Yeah. So thank
Can
you
I just
for your
do a
comments.
closing line?
Sorry?
A closing line.
I can't really because I've given you a little bit
All right.
of time after.
I just want people to bear in mind what they saw on the site visit. Thank you,
Thank
Chair.
you very much. Now I ask John Church, planning consultant. Are you, Mr. Church, speaking in favour of the application?
I'm instructed by the applicants to represent them.
So you're speaking in favour?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. And you well know without me saying that you two have got 3 minutes to...
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good evening. I'm John Church. I'm a Chartered Town Planner and I'm instructed to represent Mr and Mrs Dobbs this evening. As members of the committee will have observed during their site visits, which I think there's been more than one, this area of Matlock is not homogeneous in its layout and the design of its housing. Rather, its pleasing character derives from the disparate nature of this development, which is nevertheless complementary in its overall appearance. I suggest that the main issues before you in making a decision must be first and foremost, as law requires, the degree to which this proposal concurs with the two policies of the local plan identified in your officer's report. Here, the scale, height and detailed design and internal layout of the proposal and the interrelationship with its neighbours should, I believe, be foremost in the committee's deliberations. I've just heard the objector's comment in reference to decisions elsewhere. We'll just remind the committee, as I'm sure they don't need me to do, but each application must be determined on its own merits. This is not a proposal that will by its very nature change the character and appearance of its surroundings and impact to an unacceptable degree on the neighbours' reasonable enjoyment of those surroundings. The scale of the proposed development is not substantial. Although the roof pitch is steeper, the increase in height of the house at its eaves will not be significant. Furthermore, whilst two new dormer windows are introduced into the rear roof slope, one merely provides light to the new staircase and the landing area, whilst the other, to bedroom number 4, is also relatively small in its dimensions. Accordingly, they will not, as the report accepts, serve primary rooms that are normally in use throughout the day. On the other hand, an existing south-facing side window is closed off now, and the new window at that elevation at a higher level will be obscure glazed. There can be no unacceptable degree of overlooking of neighbours' private amenity spaces accordingly, but these details do confirm that the applicants are nevertheless conscious of neighbouring concerns, however unfounded some of them reported to you may be. They are dealt with individually in the officer's report, and I do not wish to elaborate further. However, I do believe that the County Council's suggestions for additional vehicle parking and cycle housing, perhaps if I may reflect, rather surprisingly in view of the comments that they made on the two previous applications where clearly substantial vehicle movements are involved, but the County Council's suggestions go far beyond what is reasonable in the case of a proposal to provide just one additional bedroom to a family house, as I hope the committee will agree. Chair, it's recognised that the nation needs additional housing, but it also needs housing that's fit for purpose for its occupants, as reflected in the earlier debate this evening. And that is the intent of this proposal. It's for these reasons that I support the conclusions and recommendations in the officer's report, and I commend them to the committee for your favourable consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I owe you an apology because as agent for the applicant, you were entitled actually to 5 minutes and I've obviously allowed you to go over time. So thank you for your contribution.
I'm grateful, thank you.
Thank you. So I'll bring in the case officer, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this application is for a replacement roof to the dwelling, which involves an increase of the roof height and alteration to the roof pitch. There's also installation of 2 dormer windows to the rear and a new window to the south elevation and a fixed roof light on the front. So this is a site that you visited yesterday, and you also went to the neighbouring properties, which are highlighted on here. So I'll take you to the plans. So the proposals will essentially put on a new roof, which will increase the height by 2.2 metres, which will facilitate essentially a loft conversion. So it's the creation of a bedroom in an ensuite at attic level. There are 2 dormer windows proposed to the rear and a fixed roof light to the front. The external materials will be natural stone to the front and rendered to the side and the rear, which matches the existing property. And the existing concrete roof tiles are going to be replaced with blue slate. In terms of the planning considerations, the main policy we consider here is 8C10 on extensions, and the key consideration for any proposals for extensions are whether the site is capable of accommodating this extension and whether the height, scale and form would be acceptable to the site in a setting. And also in PD10 we consider other design considerations such as scale and form and material of the existing. So officers are happy that the design of the scheme would be in keeping with the existing dwelling. In terms of residential amenity, so there are 2 dormer windows proposed. One of those is to service a landing and the other is to the bedroom. They're principally there to provide light to those rooms. They're, as by their sort of shape and orientation, they're not large. And there are already existing rear windows to the property, so there is a degree of overlooking between properties existing as it is, and officers don't feel that there'll be any worsening to this with the proposals. There's also proposed, as the agent picked up, to brick up one of the existing windows, and also there's a new window to the side elevation, the southern side elevation. So we've recommended condition 3 that be obscurely glazed. As commented by the agent, there have been concerns raised from highways about whether there should be an additional car parking space provided. So 3 spaces should be provided is what they are recommending on the basis of a new bedroom being created. Officers are content that 2 spaces should be sufficient. And I meant to highlight at the beginning of my presentation, we've made an update on the update sheet about paragraph 3.10. 7.10. And to say that the council's own parking standards are set out in Appendix 2 of the local plan in relation to 8C21, and they do not specify car parking based solely on the size of property. There are other considerations that come into that. And we also are recommending in the update sheet that you disregard Section 8 of additional considerations, which was talking about permitted development. Ultimately, you've got what you've got in front of you. It's a planning application, and it needs to be determined on the basis of planning policies, and what can be done under PD isn't a determining factor for this application. So the recommendation is for approval, subject to 3 conditions.
Thank you very much, Rosie. Can I just bring to members' attention the letter that's been circulated from Andrew and Judith Blackburn. The Vice Chair and myself, one of the co-Vice Chairs, Councillor Burford and myself, did discuss this letter of representation with officers. So if members would like to, at this point, I know it's quite detailed, but have a look, please. And if from this, perhaps, Chris, would you be able to comment at all?
Yes, Chair. I think the letter raises fundamentally two valid points, and they've both been addressed in the update to the committee report, which Rosie has just outlined. So the first of those is that it refers to a sentence in the officer report in paragraph 7.10, which suggests that the council's parking standards do not specify car parking based on the size of the property. That sentence was intended to be read in context with the preceding sentence, but just for the avoidance of doubt, the council's parking standards are not, what it should say, are not based solely on the size of the property. Other considerations come into account, should be taken into account, such as the location of the property and how easily accessible it is to the town centre. And in this case, it's a 15-minute walk approximately. And the other point that's been raised in the objection letter, it makes the point about the permitted development fallback position not being relevant to the application, and I think that's with hindsight that's a valid point. Actually, the officer report recommended approval irrespective of that permitted development position. But just for the avoidance of doubt, that paragraph is now deleted from the report, paragraph 8. So I would advise the committee don't pay any attention to what could or could not be done under permitted development, because it was always the case that this application was recommended for approval irrespective of that.
Thank you very much, Chris. Do members need a little longer with this letter? As I said, myself and Councillor Sue Burford had the benefit in the pre-officer meeting of reading this letter, but it was only right and proper, obviously, that every member of the Planning Committee tonight was aware of these representations. Councillor Peter Dobbs, questions?
Thank you, Chair. Question, is it not correct that you would regard that the pitch of the existing roof is atypically shallow, and that if the current roof had been constructed, it would probably be a metre and a half higher than it currently is? Would that be a correct assumption?
Yes, I think if you look at the drawing in front of you here, you can see the outline of the existing roof, and it does look quite a shallow pitch for that property.
Thank you. My second question, and there's an enormous amount on the portal, and the Blackburns and others have contributed extensively to that. Some of that was photographs of cars being parked on the tarmac area in front of 4 Sycamore. Would you, I'm not sure if you're the right person to ask, would you regard that as in any way something that is currently prohibited?
People can park in front of their properties, provided, you know, the only restrictions would be something like double yellow lines, preventing people from parking in front of properties, which would be, you know, traffic regulation orders, bring those in. Otherwise, on-street parking's free for anyone to park where they like. I mean, this property does have parking in the provision of a garage and a space in front of it, which we as officers have said is sufficient, 2 spaces. Clearly, the Highway Authority think there should be 3.
If I just quickly come back, it's the bit that's kind of not the pavement that might have been green if it wasn't tarmac, if you're familiar with that. And this is the part that cars are shown parked on. My understanding is that actually compared to some places, this bit of pavement parking is not particularly antisocial because the pavement is not blocked. But it's also my understanding that currently under government legislation in this, in anywhere except London, that it is not actually currently prohibited. If you could clarify.
Yes, I understand it's only London where pavement parking is prohibited. I know the site. I know you mean that it is. It's not that people are parking horizontally parallel with the house. They're parking perpendicular to the house. Yeah.
Councillor Burfoot.
Thank you, Chair. One of the main objections I feel is in the significant overlooking and loss of privacy over what currently exists. How do you as officers assess that?
it's the sort of benefits of doing the site visits and understanding the characteristics, because if you just see a drawing, you only just sort of see the distances on that drawing. So we have provided, the agent did provide us with that plan, but once you've gone out on the site, you also see the site characteristics and the different land levels as well. So obviously, as we mentioned, there are existing rear windows, so there is, as with most properties, a bit of overlooking natural surveillance between properties, whether it's into gardens, but what is our prime concerns is always whether it's direct, window to window, overlooking where you can see into somebody else's house.
Come back, is what you're saying that you don't consider it to be a significant issue, even though the objector does consider it to be a significant issue? Is that what you're saying? Is that a judgment that you're making?
Yes, officers have considered that that it's an acceptable level. We don't have any concerns.
Any further questions, Councillor Leers?
Thank you, Chair. Reggie, can you just confirm if the tree outside on that next to the parking area, which Councillor Dobbs has been relating to, has it got a TPO on it?
Thank you. We did check that today, just to be sure, because I know it was mentioned on the site visit yesterday, and it doesn't have a tree protection order.
So it's just solely in a conservation area, basically. So realistically, then there's nothing to stop that resident parking underneath that tree, then. On that
no, there isn't, and the site isn't in a conservation area,
oh,
so
right.
the tree wouldn't be protected by other means either.
Oh, thank you.
If there are no further questions, we have an officer recommendation to approve this application, but that needs a mover and seconder, or someone perhaps feels strong enough to the contrary. Members. Councillor Hughes.
I'll move officer recommendations. I think on the site visit we saw yesterday that while there is potential, some overlooking it from the windows in the attic room, the loft room, there is already overlooking from other properties into the back gardens of those properties. So I can't see that. I agree with the officer's conclusion that that there is not a large increase in overlooking as a result of building this addition on the roof.
Does that find a seconder, please? Councillor Dobbs, thank you. Do you wish to speak, Peter?
I will briefly. Clearly this is difficult because we do take on board the concerns of the neighbours, and they are serious concerns. I mean, one of the comments runs to 19 pages, doesn't it? I did attempt to read them all. The way I've looked at this is that if the applicant had a normal roof, we'd be simply talking about raising the eaves height by 60 centimetres and perhaps the total height of the roof by less than a metre, perhaps nearer a metre than 60 centimetres. But it would be a modest increase. So if they'd had a different roof and we just had a roof conversion here, it would have gone through without an issue at all. But because we've got a modest increase in eaves height, to make actually the roof more, I would argue, aesthetically pleasing, it does jar a bit, the shallowness of the roof, visually, then we're in this sort of pickle that we are, and you do have the headline figures of the roof has gone up 2.2 metres. So that is how I view it. It is a slightly strangely shaped roof, which has been rationalised into something more aesthetically pleasing, together with a loft conversion. That's how I choose to look at it, and that's that aspect. So I think I accept that it won't be visually displeasing in the area. I think it will fit in actually fairly well. And then there's the issue about parking. And obviously highways have sort of dug their heels in a little bit. But to come back, and I know we're not regarding this as sort of doing a parallel with permitted development, but if we were solely talking about a loft conversion, which would be all we were had it been a slightly different roof in the first place, then that wouldn't have raised any issues. In fact, it wouldn't even have come to committee. So I do feel that, yes, I think officer recommendations have balanced this quite well, because one of the things that we need to do, if we're not to build on more grass, green fields, is actually you have to improve the housing stock that currently exists. And this is an improvement in terms of an extra bedroom, and that seems to be a valid thing to do. So on balance, I think I go with officer recommendations and I'm happy to approve this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dobbs, for your comments. Any further comment? If not, can we put this to the vote, please? It's been moved and seconded that we grant consent. All those in favour, please show. Against? Abstentions? And just one abstention. Thank you. So, members, we turn to the final application, which pertains to St Giles Church, Church Street, Matlock, and I'm going to declare a pecuniary interest with this because my daughter lives adjacent to this application, and Councillor Peacock will kindly take members through the application.
Okay, so we're looking at pages 51 to 58 of the report. Churchyard wall and gate piers at St Giles's Church, and we don't have any speakers for this, so I'd like to introduce the officer report, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this application is for listed building consent for the installation of ground anchors and helibar into the retaining wall at St Giles's Church in Church Street in Matlock. The church itself is a Grade 2 star listed building, and we're also in the old Matlock conservation area. The churchyard wall is also itself a Grade 2 listed heritage asset. So the consent that's being sought is listed building consent to install some ground anchors and a helibar to the retaining wall. So if you look at this plan here, that shows the locations of the helibar. So there's quite a few that need to go in to reinforce the wall. The wall has been experiencing multiple defects in recent years, which includes cracking, leaning and bowing. 4 potential options for stabilisation were considered, and this option was considered the most favourable, as it's the least harmful to the heritage asset, and it would also involve minimal disturbance in terms of excavation of the churchyard. So it's been reviewed by the conservation officer. She's happy with the proposal, and it's recommended for approval only subject to 2 conditions: standard time condition and plan condition. And I should have said at the beginning that this is before us tonight because it's a council-owned planning application or council-owned site that so we've put the application in. So the recommendation is for approval as outlined in the report.
Okay, thank you, Rosie. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Burfoot.
It's not really a question, to be honest, but would somebody like, just for clarification, to just explain to us how a churchyard wall and gate piers are under the ownership of Derbyshire Dales District Council?
Closed churchyard.
Yeah.
Good point. Yes, Councillor, the churchyard was closed by order in council in late 90s, I believe. Responsibility for maintenance then passed to the parochial council. They then have the option to pass maintenance responsibility onto the parish council, who then have the option within a certain amount of time to pass maintenance responsibility to the district council. That's section 1 something of the Local Act 1972, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
Okay.
But yes, if you're interested in the history of how that happened, it's fascinating.
Sounds great. Any other questions? Nope. Do I have a mover? Councillor Lees?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Happy to move it. As the officer stated, this is the simplest way to repair or to maintain the stability of this wall, so happy to recommend it.
Okay, and a seconded. Yeah, go on.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to say I lived in an apartment block next to an 8-storey deep hole in the ground, which was anchored by this mechanism. And as far as the walls, the hole were anchored in this way, and it didn't collapse when I was there. So I assume it's a particularly good way of anchoring walls.
Okay, so it's been proposed by Councillor Lees and seconded by Councillor Hughes. All in favour? I believe that's unanimous. That's passed. Well done.
So trust me, we are getting towards the end of this meeting. So we go to number 6 on the agenda, Appeals Progress Report, found on pages 59 to 60. And in our normal way, if any member wishes to comment or raise any aspect, please do so. Chris has an update to give members, so if you'd like to do that now, then Chris. And
Thank you, Chair. Since this report was submitted for publication, we've actually received 2 further appeal decisions. One relates to the Willows Intakes Lane turn ditch. That appeal was dismissed, and further details will be provided in the next committee report. And land east of 21 Cavendish Drive, Ashbourne, was allowed, and again we can provide further details of that in the next version of this report.
Thank you very much, Chris. Any comment from members? Councillor Slack.
Just a comment. I thought turn ditch were in Amber Valley, but it must have just been one house in it. Most turn ditches in Amber Valley.
There is part of it.
Just what?
Part of it is in.
Part, yeah. I didn't realise. Yeah, thank you.
Will someone move and second that we receive this report? Moved by Councillor Hughes, seconded by Councillor Dobbs. All in favour, please show. And that appears to be unanimous. Thank you. And then we move to the final thing, because we'd already had at the beginning the enforcement report. So it's number 7, Planning Performance Report, pages 61 to 76. So again, any comment from officers pertaining this?
Chair, I did have some comments I was going to bring to the committee's attention, really in relation to speed of decision making, in relation to major applications over the period discussed in the report. It's 82.5% of major applications were determined in time, compared to a national average of around 90%. And for non-major applications, the figure is 89%, which is exactly in line with the national average. In relation to appeals, the committee will be aware of previous reports that have been presented to this committee about appeals performance in relation to major planning applications and the risk of designation. So an update to that is set out in paragraphs 2.21 and 2.22 of the report. The last time this matter was reported to the committee, appeals performance for major applications was just below the designation threshold of 10% at 9.8%, with one appeal relating to land at Throssellness Way, Brailsford, outstanding, as that appeal decision was not issued prior to 31st December and is still awaited. It does not count towards the previous 24-month period, meaning that the council did not meet the 10% threshold for designation for that period. However, the new 24-month period is underway, and this covers decisions issued between April 2024 and March 2026. So far during this period, 31 major planning applications have been determined, and out of these decisions, 3 appeals were submitted, and a total of 2 of those appeals have so far been overturned by the Planning Inspectorate, with 1 appeal decision still awaiting determination, which is the appeal relating to land off Throstlenest Way. So currently the percentage of major applications overturned on appeal is 6.45%. However, the outstanding appeal, if it were to be allowed, would push that up to 9.68%, so just below the 10% designation threshold. And so that would put the council again at risk of designation in relation to any decisions on major planning application decisions issued before 31st of March 2026.
Thank you, Chris. Can you convey from me as chair and hopefully from members of the planning committee our thanks to Dan Shipley for the actual report, because Dan is the graduate planning apprentice, and I thought it was a very good report that we received. Councillor Murphy.
Chris, why is it taking so long for the Planning Inspectorate to make this decision on Brailsford? It seems to be dragging on for 4 or 5 months now.
Chair, through you, it is quite an unusually long amount of time, given that the hearing was some months ago. I think that part of it might be to do with the fact that some further survey work was undertaken by the County Council, and that only became available after the hearing, and so that was submitted to the Inspector for consideration, and once that happens, all parties then are given rights to comment on that additional information, so it does drag the process out somewhat. So hopefully we'll get a decision on that soon.
Comments from members? If not, would someone kindly move that we accept the planning performance report? So it's been moved by Councillor Slack and seconded by Councillor Nelstrom. So all those in favour, please show. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much, members. And I obviously now formally close the planning committee meeting.